Good afternoon, good morning, good evening. All these Hangouts people, they've even changed how the being alive message works. Oh, yes, there we are. Now, what's that in your hand, Louis?
That's a GPS.
Oh, very good.
Crazy colors.
Oh, look at that. And why would we be having the disco GPS?
Because Ian asked to see it.
So what is it, Louis?
It's the Neo V2.
That's for the CUAV one, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that's for the new boards they brought out this week.
Yeah, comes with this tiny little board.
That's the V5.
Why does it need the step up? Why does it need that step up there?
It's the V5 Nano.
Yeah. Oh, he's gone. Oh. Yeah. Yeah, because they've released two, haven't they? They've got the V5 Nano and the V5 Plus, and one of them's one of them's vibration isolated, one of them isn't. Interesting looking controllers.
That was the Nano, was it?
The Nano's the non-vibration isolated model.
And that. So what's that step up in the case for? I'm wondering now.
It's the plugs.
Oh, okay. I see now. Okay, I can see now. I couldn't see. Okay.
PWM ports at the top, so not on the side.
And see, they even say Autopilot. They even say Autopilot on the side.
Ooh.
Well, that's good. And Chris is in the comments. He's awake for a change. Isn't it like 10 o'clock in New Zealand or something?
No, it's 9 o'clock. And does it run base flight?
It might run base flights sometime when the hell freezes over.
Well, you enjoy your historic.
But we're waiting for you, Bruce, to do the porting.
So they're both F7s, aren't they, Louis, off the top of my head?
Sorry?
They're both F7s.
Yes, they're both F7s.
I was having a look at the spec that the PX4 guys put out the other day, and both F7s, both 500 kilometers of RAM, both 2 meg flash, and the PX4 guys are running a thing for 20 users on them, from what I saw.
Yeah, these are already some time because when I was at the drone conference in China, the Autopilot conference in China, I was with the CUAV guys. And also the X guys were there showing the entire lineup of the spectrum, the color spectrum.
Yep.
And we have, I can say that we have a vibrant ecosystem now. That with all the very small cheap boards that Bruce likes a lot, those $20, not $20, $30 boards that used to run that software that you were mentioning, Bruce, and now can also run Autopilot.
And Bruce was mentioning those modern slick F4 boards. It's H7 now. That's where all the crazy kids are now, Bruce. They're on H7s.
Yeah, the H7s are. We still have to step up the code.
Yeah,
because we are not taking advantage of the H7.
Yeah. Well, but nobody is, are they?
Yes. All the AI needs all that processing and the ray tracing and all the stuff like that, doesn't it?
Don't worry, Bruce. We can mine some bitcoins while we are flying.
Well, that's the big thing now, isn't it? With the Lula scripts and the ability to be able to run inside of Autopilot, it's not. You're going to be able to run software inside of it.
Now, the Lula scripting, don't worry, because Michael and I, one of my presentations was about Lula scripts.
Yeah. No,
the next version will get Netflix.
You both, yeah.
No, they're going bust, mate.
At the moment, our code base runs F4, F7, H7, and we don't enable anything fancier on the higher spec boards yet.
No. As I understand it, PX4 doesn't actually support H7 either at the moment, and Ardra does, but PX4 doesn't. I don't know if it's NUTX or is it PX4 itself.
No, it's PX4.
Okay.
But I'm sure that David Cidrain, which is their low-level guy, is on top of it. And I was looking at their developers conference here in Zurich a couple of weeks ago, and they also have some interesting planning on their side. They mentioned quite a lot that we also have on Autopilot, which is the collision avoidance, and we have already some work in progress, the PRs already on the system. So we might start to enable more intelligent features while moving, because at the moment we are only doing it 2D because the drones fly 3D and the rovers only fly 2D. So for starters, the collision avoidance is only for the rovers.
Well, I'm glad that work's being done, because that'll help when I sign up for Skyrights.io, and I make sure that anyone that comes near my house pays a fee. Did we all see this madness this week? It's in the comments below, Deanne. Hello, Mad RC, and James, and of course Chris is there. If you haven't seen this, in the comments below, I just think it's tosh and nonsense. I can't see it's legal anywhere in the world. There is no such thing as private airspace. I stand to be corrected.
This got quite a bit of kickback on Twitter because they put quite a post out about it, and it was quite interesting. There was a whole quite universal kickback going, hold on, sod off, including from quite a few big players in the industry as well. Yeah, it reminds me, there was a website in the UK at one point that was offering to I'm sure it was ban drones from above your house. I don't know, does it still exist or not? I don't know if anyone saw it, but you know, this is trying to do what we've all feared for years, which is create a private air corridor where we're kicked out of, and everyone's going to be left to go sub 100, 200, 300 feet, whatever they want to do.
Oh, it looks like we're tempting James in. I've sent him the link. He can rant on this one.
Right. Tell me something, Ian. Are you exempt of road tax?
No, but my road tax pays to maintain the roads.
And
you know,
your air tax will pay for to maintain the infrastructure that keeps the air safe.
Okay, and I got no issues as a commercial operator contributing to that. Although I do already do that through my licensing, I would argue we're all going to be doing that in the UK.
Let me interrupt you to ask you something. So you always drive your car as a commercial operator, so you don't go to the beach. You guys in UK don't have any beaches, so you don't go to the beach.
No, but we're also going to be paying £16.50 at the end of this year. That's drone registration, which is to do with everything involved around that in the UK.
Yeah, but that's the license plate tax, right? It's a different thing. So
license plate.
We don't. They don't have license plate. We have a separate license plate tax here as well. They don't have that in the UK.
Yes, they don't have it yet. No. I'm sure that Mr. Johnson, after seeing this podcast, will enable that.
For me, this isn't about paying to access airspace. The reality is, at some point, there will be a method of funding needed, whichever way it's done, to manage all of this. However, this is about taking chunks of public airspace and making it private, and that is not what currently is the law, and it's not what they should be promoting, for starters, because it's just not possible.
What you're saying is different, because it can be a private entity running for the government that airspace, and they ask for a fee to maintain that.
It'll be Google.
They ask the fee to the users of that space, be it in the air or in the ground.
Yeah, well, Google have got into the airspace management business in Australia with their little app, and it's only a matter of time before they try muscling air maps and all the others out of that space. So you'll be able to fly if you use the Google system, because when you go to file your flight plan, there'll be ads everywhere, and you'll have to click through the ads, and then so it's free, but it's ads supported. And of course, perfect targeting for advertisers because we know these people have drones. So it's all going to dovetail, it'll gel.
Yeah.
Come on, James, we need to gang up on Louis.
Is he here? Oh, he is here. Oh,
Yeah.
I'm there.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
So that was that story about like that American firm basically wanting to like sell American airspace or something like that.
Did we get you out of
It's funny because we wrote back in sort of summer last year. I wrote a paper with a barrister from the Property Litigation Association. It was an absolute honk writing that paper was, but basically the whole idea is that essentially you own the airspace above your house. So that there is a thing which says that sort of, I can't remember the Latin words that she came out with, but there's a very sort of well-known common load of Latin that they spiel off, which basically says you own everything from the center of the earth up through the boundaries of your property up into the stratosphere. The thing is though, the Civil Aviation Act creates basically a defence, what they call a statutory defence, to allow people to fly within that. So it's not actually illegal to do so. It's only illegal to do so if you don't follow the rules of the air. So that's the key point. If you follow the rules of the air, then you can do whatever you want. There's no one can stop you. So the idea of people being able to put up no-fly zones around their property is just balmy.
In the USA, I think it's been court tested, and they said that it was you own the airspace up to the height of the tallest structure on your property. So if you got a 20-foot tree, you own it up to 20 feet. But of course, in New Zealand, we don't even have that, because in New Zealand, you've got to get the permission of the property owner if you wish to fly over any property with an unmanned aerial vehicle. If you've got a manned aerial vehicle, you don't need permission. But if there's no pilot in it, you actually have to get their express permission.
Well, it's going to be interesting with this new EASA regulation, what's going to happen, because they've started bringing, with PIFGOs, they basically removed the whole no overflight from the permission. So there was no problem with overflying land or property or whatever, as long as you're not recklessly endangering anyone. Now, with the new EASA regulations, the open category has introduced these things which go and say, you must have reasonable, you must reasonably be satisfied that you're not going to fly over anyone during the flight, and all of this kind of weird terminology, which again, I'm not sure quite how they're going to enforce that. Whether you're reasonably satisfied or not. Police can't sort of tend to enforce sort of a static 30-meter rule. So quite how they're going to interpret reasonable, a reasonable case, then it's, I think that's going to be impossible to manage. But what that does mean is that clearly EASA are looking to make it, section off some overflight from PFTO holders or equivalent. So quite what that will mean when you come to getting your equivalent of an OSC, which is now going to be called an operational authorization. Whether that means that, from what I've read, actually overflight, there are some specific terms which are being introduced, and specific scenarios which, not standard scenarios, but similar. I can't remember what they called it, but there's I think it's called, it's operational authorization, but quite how they're going to define it is going to be interesting.
Yeah, because obviously we had CAP 722 has finally landed today. Finally, after nearly a year after the changes have happened. I've skimmed through it myself tonight twice. Still looking for some glaring stuff that I have missed, but as you say, there's a lot of change to the technology have an effect on what we do as well, and it is understanding how those changes stand in law. 241 means that you can't do anything that would recklessly endanger anyone else. That's the simple reality, and that's their go-to catch-all. If you fly in, something happens, they're going to throw 241 at you. That's the basic reality of it. You shouldn't have done it because it wasn't safe. But as you say, within the EU regs, there's some changes as well which make the overflight quite ambiguous.
Yeah, it's interesting times, as I say, isn't it? So do you think we could have sort of perhaps if we were to go to a big event, I don't know, some sort of big air show or something, do you think we could have some sort of pin the reckless endangerment charge on the airspace user game or something like that? Do we will come back to this subject, I'm sure, but did we all see Nats's latest foot in mouth effort? And now that we've tented James in, has ARP said anything to them?
No, I did see it on one of the Facebook forums, but I did mention it, and I think we've kind of decided that it's not big enough to comment at this stage. But you know, it's frustrating because I actually saw Andy Sage last week, and he was at the conference, Drone Tech conference in London, and I had a chat with him. And you know, I think from what the conversation I had, he didn't mean it in the context which it came out, and he did seem sincere about that. But after having that conversation, it's just then you see this week, and you're just like, literally, how on earth that got through their media department is beyond belief.
Believe a civil servant, did you?
Well, he's technically not a civil servant. Nats has a very complex funding, payment, and existing setup, doesn't it? I'd like to think Andy wasn't involved in that at all. I suspect this is a marketing stunt by the marketing department, and no one's actually gone and asked the question, do you think this would be a good idea? And what's more worrying is, after the whole kickoff we had not 3 weeks ago or 4 weeks ago, they just went, yeah, that'll be all right. It makes you wonder, did they actually take any notice of the whole Andy Sage thing at all to go ahead with something like that?
But then another interesting look, this cup that I proudly display back here, that's from, was it 2 Christmases ago? They had their sort of airspace knowledge safety online quiz thing, and they had posters, and they had make this a team thing, all join in, and so that was I thought that was a really, really good idea. That was a positive little game. It was they got it out there. So what's changed? They've gone from positive messaging, let's work with people, to damn them all. well, maybe not that, but I wonder who changed. I wonder which key person changed in that.
I suspect they've brought in a marketing team. Frankly, I suspect they've got this whole thing smacks very much of modern day happy clappy marketing. Frankly, I suspect.
So what did the marketers say? We've got to sell Nats as being safety people. We're going to keep you safe, and that's what we're for. So those nasty drones, we're going to keep them all out of the way. What are marketing trying to sell?
They've been to spinmeisters.com.
It's hard to know what they're trying to do. That's the problem, On the one side, it's meant to be a serious organization that is there to help airspace users, all airspace users, and they're having a big push on the drone operations, and they are doing some fantastic work as well, and that we shouldn't take that away from them. Even in the middle of the Andy Sage thing, I still mentioned about the work they were trying to do to get operators access within FRZs, because they are struggling in certain areas, and airports are turning them down blanket, categoric, not letting them in. But on the flip side of it, you've got this, hey, look at us, we're going to try and sell you a service. So it does feel like it's split in 2 factions or 2 different ways at the moment.
Well, a lot of these big organizations, they're very sort of disjointed, and they don't, it's almost like you've got 20 companies all wrapped up into one. So, I would be very, very surprised if Andy or the communication lady who sort of works with Andy on some things, I would be very surprised if they were aware that this was happening, because after recent events, it just smacks of, here we go again. So yeah. I think what's happened, it was probably been organised for 2 or 3 months. I imagine, this has probably been going on for a while, and they've not, it's not really an event that is drone related. They had a drone game in it, but from what I saw, like, they had a few other games as well. So from that perspective, it just sounds like it was maybe sort of badly thought out again, which is just it's frustrating. But I don't think there's too much malice in it. But
it's
you know,
just
it'd be nice to see them come out with a game that was, you know, how many lives could the drone save? You know, how many lives can you save with the drone?
yeah.
Or something like that.
And it's that constant, you know, rogue drone operators. It's again playing on drones are bad. Okay, it was very low level. It was a media stunt that probably didn't actually get that much reach anyway. It hasn't really done the drone industry any harm, but it's just another example of, hey, look at bad drones. They're everywhere. And that's the thing you take from it is, you know, it's that constant look at drones. That, you know, it's as you say, it should have been positive. Why did it have to be the bad drones? Why did it have to be them?
I recommend everyone goes and looks at iCopter's video on this. He did a really good thing. Is it's how many drunk airline pilots can you spot today? And it's so good. Right round. It's brilliant.
Yeah.
Well, this is the thing.
Dangerous. Sorry, James. After you.
This is the thing. Like, you know, some of the problems at the moment. You know, there's a lot of the bigger problems aren't actually within the drone industry at the moment. So, GA aircraft are notorious for cutting across controlled airspace. You know, where there's a corner of controlled airspace, they'll cut the corner off because it'll save them a few minutes of time. And they're notorious for doing this. And it might only be, you know, a few hundred meters or sometimes half a kilometer or whatever. But this is happening sort of quite regularly, and it's, you know, it does feel a little bit like, you know, drones is the easy option to go and get some attention. You know, if you say the word drone, suddenly everyone's interested, and it's frustrating from our perspective. But I guess it's, you know, they say no PR is bad PR, so, you know, at least people know about drones.
Well, Guerrilla Drones is quite rightly saying in the comments, it's the drip effect, James. That's the problem, and that's quite right. I think maybe I need to put a Freedom of Information request in to see how many people were charged with careless and reckless in the last 10 years. That would be a good number to know. But it's very, I don't know. I saw you guys might know better than me, but one of the minor royals was tootling about in a helicopter, and they reported a glider, an air prox with a glider, and I see that came out in the UK paper as near fatal crash for whichever one it was, and it was just a report. It was just both aircraft saw each other, they were quite close, and both took action, but that became in the press. And this speaks to James's. You're going to have to chat with the airprox people, but they're going to have to take this into consideration for that sort of thing as well. Not just drones, but the way airproxes are being dismantled by the press now and turned into stories that aren't really stories. It needs to stop. Not just us that's affected.
I guess for us, like, you know, all we can do is just report the positive stories, and the more that we play into this, I think the more that we're playing into their hands. You know, I think probably actually we're better off to give more airtime to the positive stories and to talk about that than to keep, you know, basically reacting to all of this kind of stuff, because reacting doesn't actually get you anywhere. All it does is keeps the topic in, you know, in the sort of conversation. So if we can maybe counterbalance some of that, you know, it's really difficult when you've got the likes of mainstream media reporting so negatively. But, you know, all we can do is do our bit and hope that they eventually get bored. Like, what other options are there?
And we've got to hold their feet to the fire a little bit. They can't be allowed just to get away with it every time. And this week, I'm beginning to lose count on the number of positive police, UK police force drone stories there are. There are several a week now. I saw a missing person picked up, and there was a couple of big fires this week that they've been hanging out over. There really is some positive stuff happening. I promise I'll do more to post those stories on SES News. A very small thing.
This is why I think we need the. This is why I think electronic conspicuity is actually extremely important for us. You know, some people might say, "Oh, well, there's extra cost on my drone and all the rest of it," but actually, what it will do is allow us to prove some of this information is incorrect. And it'll basically be able to allow us to go and have a bit of truth with some of the data that's coming out. And once we've got that, then it's kind of like, well, checkmate. What's your next move? We're telling everyone where we are. All of the drones that are out here are conspicuous. So, if you're reporting a drone sighting, then surely, there's something going wrong here.
You're right. I think we're just gonna pick the winner, though, haven't we? Really, the low cost, low weight winner, and not be forced into a corner by one of the UTM companies that have bought radio manufacturers and bought into LoRa. There's one of them's bought quite a big chunk in a LoRa radio company. So that's what they want. They're going to be pushing us down a way to sell their particular device for this remote ID. Surely just notifying the flight on a smartphone is good enough, isn't it?
Yeah, and Europe have said this has to come in 2 years, which is the crazy aspect of this. In less than 2 years, we have to have a remote ID solution that is potentially baked into drones within. And
that's a different thing to electronic conspicuity, though. It's not the same thing.
No.
So what we're going to have electronic conspicuity to get us into a UTM, as well as remote ID, so the copper can see us. It's all nonsense. It's all nonsense.
The comment
I don't disagree with James. I don't disagree with you, but I think we're going to be very careful as to how it happens to us.
See, I still have great concerns with regards to FIN's notification of flights, because I have no issues notifying of flights. What I have issues is everybody having access to visibly know where I am whilst doing those flights, because I still, at the end of the day, as a remote pilot, I have a responsibility to ensure the area I'm operating out of, where my aircraft will land, will remain secure. And at the end of the day, if we're going to start publicizing the point which I'm standing, then that potentially, from a public point of view, opens me up to all sorts of other problems as well. And it could mean the single operator days are a thing of the past, for instance, because if you don't have the ability to secure the location on your own, you could have to have additional people with you. So that's my concern with heading down that road. It's not so much the aircraft, it's actually the pilot.
Well, it's funny you should mention that. A good chum of mine recently had an issue where he was attacked at a site. He was doing a survey with a Phantom, and and he had to do another 20 similar surveys of a similar sort of location, but different ones. So what he did was he stood in the middle of it all, chucked the believer up, and did a 300-kilometer circle with the surveys at each one as he went around the circle. So that's how we got. But but that's another.
As you say, with all these things. Sorry, I say those things. Identifying the aircraft, I have zero issues with. But when we look at, as you say, conspicuity, remote ID, all of this thing that's being packaged, which we're going to land with fins in the end, and all of that, it's okay having that. But at the end of the day, as a remote pilot, I have a legal obligation to ensure the flight I do is safe, and as a single operator, doing that when there's a potential of incursion from the public, it is extremely risky when you're not used to having that.
Will the public definitely have that access?
We don't know, do we? James probably knows a little bit more than me on this side of it. All of that's yet to be determined, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I think it's quite how this sort of moves ahead is going to be extremely complicated, because you've got a lot of 70-80% of the drones out there are DJI aircraft, and any of the new models that come out are probably going to conform to these new standards for remote ID and all the rest of it. But what about all those existing aircraft that are already out there? Are they going to have to be retrofitted with this technology? How is that going to be rolled out? There's going to be a lot of people who have very expensive equipment, like my last company, who to go and start fitting this kind of technology on board. It might be feasible, it might not be feasible, but it's going to be a hell of a lot ball ache.
Well, under the EU regs in 2022, what was built today won't be allowed to fly. It's as simple as that. You know, the operation runs out. Now, that's not to say they won't extend it. That's because, well, it won't be able to fly is the wrong term to use. It would fall under the specified category, not the open category. So you would require an operational permission to be able to use them within a congested area, for instance, or close to people or buildings. So take an Inspire, for instance. Today, in 2022, you would not be able to use that in a congested area like you can today. Now, they've agreed to increase, give us a rollover until then, but they haven't said what they're going to have to do after that. So you might have to fit a box, or it could be you will need to change your aircraft. Are
Are you sure that an Inspire will be still flying in 2022? A commercial drone these days has a short, so short lifetime that, come on, 2022. Unless you kept your Inspire in the cupboard, it's not a viable drone any longer.
No, I'd agree. It's older. However, there are many commercial operators flying an Inspire 1 still today with an X5 camera on the bottom of it, and it's not their major go-to aircraft. But if you take then the lifespan of maybe the Inspire 2, or the Unique H, you know, the H, for instance, you know, these are models that are still being sold today. So someone who buys,
no, come on, I've seen drones wrecking some thousands of hours in less than a year.
Yeah.
So those drones won't be flying next year, so much less in 2022.
It's you know, I'm probably still expected to still have my Inspire 2 by then. But at the end of the day, the big players will just swap their gear out. But
come on, I still have my Flamewheel 450 with a NASA board. So yeah, how many times do I use it? 0 to none.
But then again, what else is there at the moment? You know, okay, let's argue that, okay, we're going to say the Inspire is gone, but cinema platform, there is no platform on the market today that will meet the EU regulations, and we've only got 2 years for that to happen. So, you know, there's the problem is I agree that the lifespan of a commercial aircraft is fairly short. At the end of the day, people are buying models now. You would expect them to still be using them in a year and a half, 2 years' time. So unless something changes quickly, people could end up in potential issues. But again, they may introduce a new category for it. They haven't said that yet.
Well, let's just remember with these new EASA rules, which is quite interesting because they were introduced to try and make it easier for people to go and get into commercial operation. You've now got to write, you know, look at a lookup table with about 18 columns and about 16 rows in it to go and work out which section you fit into and what set of rules you then have to follow. Yep. I think it will eventually make things easier. Eventually, I think in the short term though, it's going to make things a lot harder because what PFCOs are going to end up doing is having to switch their PFCO over to an operational authorization, is what they call it, which is basically the equivalent of an OSC.
Yeah.
I don't think they're going to have to necessarily go through an OSC in the full extent, but they're going to have to switch it over. So actually, most people are going to be operating in a specific category. I would say 99% of people well, everyone in the initial instance is going to be operating in a specific category. Pretty much no one is going to be operating in the open category. The CAA actually stated in CAP 1789, they came out and said that the chances of any existing aircraft falling within the open category when it comes into force is extremely unlikely.
Yep.
So they've already said that, you know, when the open category activates, it's very unlikely that anything will conform to it. It's going to take manufacturers time to be able to build products that do conform to it. You know, looking at some of the requirements, they have to, if it hits someone in the face, it has to be able to have caused like minimal sort of damage to their face. Does this mean that they're going to have to start putting prop guards on them.
Yeah.
Quite how this works out is still yet to be determined, to be honest.
It's funny enough, I had a quick chat with some people in the thing on that one, and as you said, there's a few things which are key, which is, as you say, force. The amount of force it causes, noise level is another big one, and that's very hard for anyone to comment on because that takes some very specific tests. The props, does it mean you have to have prop guards? I think it's probably not, but the comment that was put to me from someone who deals with ESCs was the props are going to have to pretty much stop instantly on any form of impact. There's going to have to be a slight change to the motor algorithms to allow them to, if it detects impact, cut the power instantly. And many aircraft do that now anyway. The complex bit of this, which really is going to get them, is how the police and everyone's going to deal with it. Because as James says, what you're going to have is in 2022, a guy's going to be flying in the park, a police officer's going to turn up, and the guy's got a Mavic. Okay, so is it category C1 or C0? Is it classified? Is it not classified? Is it sub 900 grams? Is it under 900 grams? Is he within a congested area or not? They've got no hope of figuring this out. They're going to want to look at the bottom of aircraft and go, does it say C1, C2, or C3? Hold on, C1 or C2? What's the difference on them? It's insanity. Where they were going to try and make it easier, it has simplified the overall rules and added in insane levels of complexity around the aircraft. That's what they've done.
Well, I've already preempted this, and I've set up a little business selling portable scales, so the police can carry them around with them and weigh them. Is this 249 grams or is this 251 grams? And then I'll have to check to see if it's got a camera or not, and then I'll have to check to see if it's a toy. I don't know quite what the test would be, whether it's a toy or not. But
Pig.
Yeah, there's a lot of categories for a sub 250 gram. I think there's four categories for the sub 250 gram, and different rules depending on the category. So,
and self-built.
I'm sure I've seen someone else with scales in parks hanging around. I'm sure there's a business in that.
And the other thing is, self-builders are going to struggle with this big star because they're not going to make any open category, isn't going to be available to them. So self-build is going to be forced into the specific category, whatever happens, basically. And I'm not talking racing quads, that's slightly different. However, anyone building, Louis with his 450, anything like that, is going to be forced into the specific category as well.
Yeah, no, I think the specific is going to be around for a while, and I think we're going to be operating in that category for some time. Whether anyone who's going to be operating in that is going to have to follow CAP 722 guidance, which has just come out. So there's going to be a lot of ops manual updates if that's the case, which might please a few people. But
one of the many ops manual writing services that are roaming around these days, James.
You can get this stuff off the shelf, can you?
Oh, shocking.
Well, that's what happens in manned aviation. There's services that are set up to do that. So why not? As long as they offer a decent service that works, you would be upset if you kept getting them pushed back.
I think that's the only bit of the commercial drone industry in the UK that's actually making money at the moment is the ops manual writing service. Everyone else is losing money hand over fist. But the ops manual writing service guys are quids in, I can tell you now.
Well, I'm doing operational safety cases at the moment, so that's where I'm focusing most of my efforts. So I'm trying to learn all this operational authorization rubbish.
You can write mine, James.
Get on the whole SORA and the standard scenarios and all that kind of stuff.
So you're gonna be able to get me down to 0.5 meter in congested area with no prop guards and no additional requirements.
Yes, but it'll be a helium balloon, and then you'll be fine.
But if I ever get my PFCO back, because at the moment I still haven't had it, I might come and see you.
Now, Bruce, how's your helium balloon coming on?
Well, there's some motorized airships. I don't know if you've seen a few of the companies out there doing them. There's one called Mothership in the States, which is making some pretty cool stuff. And basically got these blimps, which are actually pretty maneuverable for a blimp. You'd kind of think they'd just, you'd take off and then you'd be chasing it down the other end of the field. But it's actually, they're pretty maneuverable.
If there's any wind, mark my words, if there's any wind, you'll be chasing it. And when the thing's when you've got to deflate the thing for whatever reason, you'll be crying because it's bloody expensive to fill them up again. But Bruce knows that. Bruce, where's your helium balloon? Or not hydrogen balloon, sorry.
Hydrogen's plentiful, cheap. It's the most abundant element in the universe. I'm not wasting the Earth's precious helium resources. It's sitting under my bench because I haven't had time to. It hasn't been totally calm, except for yesterday afternoon was calm. But no, it'll come out in the spring when the weather improves. Even
perhaps you can maybe you can tweet that when you do that, and we can all
It's going to be next year's tweet.
Follow
next year's tweet.
At XJet.
At XJet. Let's see if we can get him to double figures. Maybe you could send out the phone and get it to tweet the images as it's climbing away.
How many followers has he got now? He's still got more than me as well. Let's have a look. How many are you up to now, Bruce?
I don't check that stuff. Maybe I should do a bit of a plug and get more followers and embarrass you even further.
But now that what's it? Instagram's got rid of the like count and all that sort of thing in Australasia. I mean, will followers matter?
Yeah, and I was going to get my fat injected in my bum to go on Instagram, but I've decided that there's no loss involved. I'm not interested.
Well, I thought you had.
So, have you weaponized this balloon, Bruce?
Yes, it's if you set fire to it, it will go bang.
Because I've seen you can weaponize things now.
Yes, you can. You put weapons on anything. I'm thinking of putting a flamethrower on my scooter.
That flamethrower, you had to mention that. The flamethrower.
Don't you remember the thing the Chinese had a flamethrower for burning stuff off high tension power lines? It's not
they
new.
did, didn't they? Yes, they did. Yes.
Yeah.
Stuff. And it's like that guy that reinvented the coaxial helicopter. The media is just begging for free stories because it means even their interns don't have to write. They just put a byline on it, and there you go. There's a few more eyeballs on pages and more money in the bank. It's rubbish.
Quite amazing the number of headlines, different headlines that went around that flamethrower. It certainly did make it the rounds, didn't it?
1,500 quid. You can have one for 1,500 quid. It's not bad.
Yes.
Did you see that the Phantom with the fireworks?
Yeah, that was a setup.
All set up, apparently. Yeah, it was quite cool though. It's definitely given some people some ideas. I reckon if you've got a dodgy neighbour next door, then there's people thinking, this could be quite a good idea.
But don't forget to film through his bedroom window first. You've got to make sure the stereotypes are reinforced.
Absolutely.
I could say a lot of stories about fireworks, but I could probably see someone come in and drag me off, so I better not.
We had a chap who was a violin maker by trade, but he also made free flight model aircraft. And in our playing field, when he got bored of them so he used to make the most exquisite model gliders, but when he got bored with them, he would stuff them full of fireworks and send them up the line and blow them up in the air. The groundsman hated us for that. But anyway, that's another story.
This video's been demonetized because it's got violence in it.
Yeah. Maybe that'll be the next game next year, says Gorilla Drones. Smooth Virus says Elon Musk, of course, had that flamethrower, and Rybat saying that Part 107 in the USA is now a joke. I'm not quite sure why it's more of a joke. Maybe you can elaborate a little bit, but it is, and he's mentioned legislation by all countries is doing nothing for the common man, all being geared for corporations only. It does feel a little bit like it's going that way, doesn't it?
It feels like services. You can as a Google, their services companies. Amazon are known. If you look at Amazon, they're known to deliver product, but Amazon AWS is one of the biggest things on the planet. They're not interested in delivering drones in boxes. They want to run it in the background, and that's the fight now is into services. That's where it is.
Yeah, and I reckon the players will come out of the woodwork. Google, Amazon. We've got Richard with. There was an Altitude Angel and that sort of stuff. They're out there in the front, but behind the scenes, these big guys are watching, learning, getting their act together. And they'll just bowl on in. Yeah. And because Google knows everything about every politician, they can say, if you don't want the world to know that you watched porn yesterday, we want this contract.
You mentioned a very large lever that I've never considered that they had. Of course, it's all obvious now. It's very clear.
It's yeah, and as you said, and Bruce is actually right. Yeah, they'll just walk in one day and take over the industry. And as good as Kitty Hawk, Altitude Angel are, they are minuscule in relation to the size of those companies. If they decide to walk in and say it's our game now.
And speaking of Altitude Angel and these things, did you watch iCopter's video about the Silverstone thing, where the obviously the police took down? He was using the NATS app, which has got Altitude Angel in the background, and he went to check for temporary flight restrictions. There were none. There were none in there. It wasn't until he went to airspace that the temporary flight restrictions showed up. So the NATS app's got some problems, and anyone relying on the NATS app could have thought it's safe to fly a drone here and got themselves into trouble. So I wonder if those guys that did get their collar felt by the police were using the NATS app and acting on information which was actually leading them astray.
Well, this was actually a pertinent point in the consultation. I don't know if you remember the consultation from, it feels like about 10 years ago now, but I think it was only about 12 months ago. But they actually spoke about the fins in that, and they were saying, if we are going to use a fins, should it be compulsory? One of the questions was, should it be compulsory that the data has to be correct? If we're going to mandate a fins, then surely the data has to be correct. And so I think that's definitely an interesting point. Is if you are going to mandate this stuff, then it becomes a central point of error. If something goes wrong and everyone's relying on this one thing, then it can get quite hairy quite quickly. And we saw that a couple of weeks ago how Gatwick air traffic control can be hacked. And it doesn't make you wonder, if you have a similar thing happening in a world where drones are flying around autonomously on one of these systems, then there suddenly becomes a few vulnerabilities there that need to be addressed.
Yeah, well, I suppose that leads you down the line of thinking of, well, how autonomous is autonomous? So what what are they? How close are the people in the loop, or what decision making is on board? Can it make its mind up to do its own a different sort of thing? But it's all aviation. Well, a couple of the big original UTM providers did come out with awful aviation data within their apps. It was very, very, very wrong. And in this case, I know you had to move the sliders around, and it's the semantics of exactly which sort of airspace is there. But yeah, perhaps it should just, if there's a restriction like that, it's a matter of how it's done, isn't it? If there is that sort of restriction is there, then you must show it.
The problem is we've got 10 apps available just for the UK airspace, which all show roughly the same. But the reality is, this is where the problem is. It's roughly the same, and roughly the same doesn't cut it. It's got to be the same, or the government mandates one app, and that's where the data goes. And at the end of the day, I wouldn't care if they turned around and said, right, we're going to mandate every drone user needs to use NATS app as part of the ANL. At the end of the day, I got no issues with that as long as the data is correct.
Well, I think you have to be a little bit careful. I think that we need a single source of truth, but you do also want there to be a level of competition, because in an industry which is developing, if you only got one solution to something that's going to be developing over time, it's not going to develop over time. No. It's going to stay as it is, and it's going to get more expensive as it ages. You need some level of competition in there to go and bring down the cost and keep things improving. So yeah, we definitely need one source of truth. I can't remember what Project Chatham.
Yeah, that rings a bell.
Yeah.
Which was looking at mapping data and things like that. That's the kind of thing that we need, is that kind of the source of truth, but then different people operating on top of that, and displaying it in different ways and offering different services and all the rest of it. There's a lot of stuff you can do on top of that data, but that core data is kind of fundamental to everything, and that needs to be a single source of truth.
But we're talking about apps and all this, and the brave, shiny, bright new world and all that. But basic common sense and knowledge or simple training or simple, if the red arrows were, because they're going to be at Silverstone, or there's lots of helicopters going to be at Silverstone, then there's going to be, you should know there's going to be some sort of flight restriction. You don't need an app to tell you that. You know, it's and that, but that's kind of BMFA training, day one training, nothing special needed. Or am I being too naive?
But then again, we fly model aircraft at flying sites every day. At the end of the day, it's not being in a location with other aircraft around is not dangerous. It's what you are doing. So at the end of the day, just we have to be careful not to get down this road of, well, we're in this road of, oh, you're not allowed to fly there because there's another aircraft in the air. At the end of the day, you could be flying 20 meters off the ground. You could be flying 10 meters off the ground.
Sure, but Silverstone's the biggest heliport in the world for a few hours, whilst they're all rushing in and out, and the red arrows and no end of it. I mean, we're not talking about Tokoroa with its one aircraft every fortnight.
Ian's dead right, though. Ian's dead right, because we do have this belief, there's a perception that if there is an aeroplane around, you can't possibly fly a drone because it's too dangerous, when the reality is that we can mix the two quite adequately. Because, for example, I was flying at the airfield yesterday. My maximum altitude was probably, I don't know, maybe 10 meters, and I was displaced to the side of the runway by, I don't know, maybe 150, 200 meters. There should never be an aircraft in that position. So my drone being there was no threat to aviation.
You're thinking about it. You're thinking about it, and you're thinking about a problem, and you're being safe. So that's fine. That's your kind of built-in training, as it were, your safety-based training. But you know, the bloke pulling his whatever it was out of the back of his car might well just fire the thing, because we all know they fly them very far out of line of sight, straight across the back.
At Silverstone, that's valid. But I mean, I'm talking about other situations where a pilot sees a drone. Oh my God, close the airport. Yeah. I mean, you know, these things have to be, we have to normalize that situation a bit and codify what's involved. And just seeing a drone is not grounds for shutting down an airport any more than seeing another airplane is, because you're more likely to hit another airplane than you are to hit a drone if you're a pilot. So, you know, where are the risks? Where's the reality? Actually, I got a paper which was obtained under the Freedom of Information Act in Australia about the rationales behind some of CAS's changes. It will shock the snot out of you. I'm going to do a video on it. You wouldn't believe the thinking that went on behind their new regulations, and it shows why they're so crap. It really is bad.
But were CASA being dragged by the nose, or were their opinions being...
Yeah, politicians got involved. Politicians driven by public hysteria got involved, and they've subverted the whole safety process involved in making regulation, and it's happening all over the world.
Well, that is what's happening, isn't it? We've said it for weeks. That is what's happening. The politicians have got involved. Now it's stuffed. But, you know, other things will happen, and we'll fall out the news, and hopefully things will improve. Maybe maybe not. What's the time? Oh gosh, 10 minutes to go. Now, what else are we gonna...
Oh my God, have you guys Gary, I don't know if you fell on the clickbait side of things, because that news about a drone manufacturer giving cashbacks on exchanging of the drones.
Yeah, I put that clickbait up. Yeah,
that's a clickbait. Come on, 400 euros for a spanking pristine Mavic 2 Pro. Are they kidding?
Yes, I've just been looking at this, Louis. Now I've got it up, and I'm looking down the list. So, grade A, Mavic 2 Pro. How much did you say?
400.
400.
Yeah. They give you 100 if it does not work.
Wow.
Well, there'll be a lot of them about, but
yeah.
All right. So why do you think that's not going to work then, Louis?
Come on, that's a clickbait, Gary. That's a pure clickbait.
Well, here you go. Here's an advert now. If you've got a Mavic that does work and is in good condition, I'll give you 500 quid.
There you go. Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because Autel, is it Autel? I can never say it.
Autel, I think.
Autel.
I don't know.
Making the ready to switch to the.
They do that orange drone.
Yeah.
They do that orange one that looks like a phantom.
as you say, Class A, if we look at what they're going to give for a parrot, if you've just bought yourself a nice new naffy, they're going to give you £160 for it.
Yeah,
Well,
nice. I'm
Which
so
company
happy.
is this? Is this like We Buy Any Drone or something?
No, it's the manufacturer
Autel.
themselves. Yeah, Autel themselves. DJI did this a while back with some trade-ins, and the prices weren't particularly exciting for anyone either. I don't really know why drone manufacturers do this, because it's, if you're going to change, you generally are just going to toss it on Facebook or eBay, aren't you? Well, I thought that's what everyone did.
It's like buying a new car. They give you a trade-in, and you think, I've got a great deal because they gave you this much for my old car, but the margins are built into the new product, so you're really better off selling secondhand.
Yeah. I'm not sure they're going to get too many people take that up, that's for sure.
what's Chris going to get for a mini quad covered in mud? And love your new videos, Chris, by the way. I love that.
Bottom of a river.
Oh, you know the story, do you, Bruce? You know the inside grip.
Yeah, it's in one of his videos. He had lost a video, and I don't know if I was but it ended up in the water, and I don't think he recovered it.
Yes. Well, I love that new wing thing. Great videos. If you don't know Chris iForce 2D, he's in the comments. Click on, I guess you can click his name there. Go off and find his channel. Really, really interesting channel. Most interesting channel to come out of New Zealand. Oh, I couldn't resist. Sorry.
Does he use Twitter? That's the difference. Does he use Twitter? Right?
He might use Twitter. You know, he might actually use it. Not not like yourself. What else have I got on the list? So we've done the flamethrower.
Obviously, Kitty Hawk, isn't it? That's a big one.
Oh, the Lance stuff going on over there. Yeah. A birthday shout out to you love to my wife, your wife Tony. Right, so give me a birthday shout out. Give my love to my wife Tony. I'm not reading that very well. I seem to. Oh, it seems to be the 1970s, and I'm a DJ on a breakfast show. Yes, of course. Happy birthday, Brian, till I fly. And hello to your lovely wife. There we are. Maybe Bruce will do that. Bruce is who you really want.
Taking requests. Can you play my favourite music?
Well,
I thought of something. I've been watching in New Zealand here. We had it in the last week or so. We had this big thing, how new drone rules are coming because of the evils of drones. And I wrote a column actually just showing how ludicrous it is that these politicians and these regulators pluck numbers out of their posterior to make effect. For example, a little over a year ago, we were told New Zealand there are 280,000 drones in New Zealand. CAA told us that. Last week, we were told there are 77,000 drones. So somewhere, 203,000 drones have gone missing, right? This shows you the accuracy and their ability to scope the problem, which doesn't exist. Then we were told in this same release from the New Zealand government that drones were going to be a major player in the New Zealand economy with 7.9 billion New Zealand dollars, which is about 5.5 million US. Yet I read a report from Bloomberg that says the entire drone economy is going to be worth just 14 billion US dollars. So New Zealand's going to have 1/3 of the global drone economy. The government is so out of touch with reality here, and these are the people making the rules. How can you make good rules when you have no idea what you're doing and your figures are so at odds with reality? So I'm going to do a rant about that. Hey, I just have.
Do you remember when we used to have that Wheel of Fortune thing, and we'd guess a number and come up with a number for whatever part of the industry it was, and that still applies. We could equally do that now. We could still just roll dice and make up numbers and just attach it to a report.
Yep.
If ever you see a report in SES News, one of these industry forecasts, it'll be because it's very outrageous. That's why to get in there, it's got to be absolute tosh, and then that's why I put it in. Because it's quite madness, and how people sell these reports as well. How they have the gall to sell people reports of the industry and all that sort of thing, when someone like Gay Arpaz and whoever, I can't remember the names of the guys in Australia and various other groups, are far better placed to give you a more real story and situational report.
You can hear from our corridors of power is the tapping of white canes.
Well, that's another attachment for your drone, isn't it? Well, forget the flamethrower. You know, a little tap 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 tap. Yeah, no.
I've got to admit, I'm not quite a big believer in growth over the next sort of few years, but I don't think it's going to be the individual operators who will benefit from that growth. I think what you're going to see happen is the big engineering construction companies fully getting on board with this sort of stuff, and the people who are going to make the money are going to be the companies like your Copters, your Uplift Drone Training, your I can't remember half of them, but the people who are selling the equipment, they're selling the services, they're bringing that capability to those big companies. That's where I see the massive growth over the next few years. I think the small operators, there will be, I think you'll still see some growth and you'll still see success in that market, but those who aren't differentiating themselves and those who are just going up and taking photos are going to be the ones that will get sort of knocked out quite quickly. You need to be providing a service to the client, you know, answering their question or giving them the data that they need to solve their problem. But photos is just going to, you know, it's just a race to the bottom from what I can see.
We've said it many times, and we spoke about this one before, and at the end of the day, the data acquisition side of it is the bottom end of the market. It will be the processing and the getting the information out of that data. The data is useless unless it gives you information.
Yeah. You've got to turn it into actionable data, haven't you? Otherwise, it's just numbers or pictures or whatever.
You know, technology will move forward to the point where anyone can walk into a field and hit go, and it'll do it, and that is going to happen. You know.
Yeah.
It must be rather conflicted if you're an NQE though, and you're getting some guy, you know, he's just bought his Phantom and he's like, okay, I'm gonna start my drone business now, and you're just thinking,
you see him putting out 6 or 7, 8 a week with all the NQEs. But probably, I think there's 5 or 6 big ones, and they're all spitting out roughly 4 or 5 a week. So what we got 30 people a week entering the industry. To do what?
Well, here it's even worse. So you have your remote pilot's license, then you have your remote operator certificate, and the schools are churning people out for their remote pilot's license and completely forgetting to tell them they need a remote operator certificate, which costs about £30,000 and takes at least 2 years to acquire. But people are going out with just the RPL, and the training schools are quite happy with them to spend £2,500. Let them spend £2,500 to get, and I've not told them the full picture. It's immoral. It's absolutely immoral in my.
You know, I have to say, you know, I was trained by Ruster in the UK. They were very, very good about the whole thing. You know, the whole industry. But at the end of the day, their job was to get me through and ensure that I'm safe, and what I did after that, there was very little interest in it. That's nothing against them, but that is the situation. All the NQEs at the moment are interested in getting people through the door, and they're going to have to evolve with the EU. They're going to have to evolve with everything, because the reality is their business is ended. It will end as time goes on, so they're going to have to be something else.
And where the big money is in training, I don't think mandatory training is where the money is going to be. It's going to be optional training. It's going to be, how do you collect data to do a building survey, you know, a roof survey, how you know, a health and safety course.
Well, it's creating drone programs within large businesses. At the end of the day, a drone program in a large construction company is not as simple as a pilot and a bunch of drones. You have to build an entire process, a business case, that the whole business process, the business is going to in it. So the training aspect is a part of it, but it's going to be about delivering a drone business into a business and building them a drone business for their core business.
So,
in the comments,
your guys are, in my opinion, barking at the wrong tree.
which tree do you bark at, or is it just the moon?
No, because you're speaking about training and all that, and you guys are forgetting that drones are getting smarter and smarter every day. So, and the level of automation that the drone can have now is much greater than 6 months ago,
Yep.
or even 1 year ago. So speaking about training and the missions and all that, it's going to be done autonomously by the drone.
We actually said that, Louis. What we're saying
I have
is,
no doubts about that.
yeah, we're
I have
actually
no doubts about that. It will be click the button to start.
and that's what we said. And that's what we said just now. You might have missed. And the point was the pilot will be the lowest end in this. It will be a person who walks into a field and hits a button, and it'll do the rest.
No. Even for complex scenarios like inspections of bridges and internal tanks, like I was just seeing in one clip of news on Gary's site, that's all one button press. Even for complex, not only for the take the picture, like the 3D used to make popular the term the droney, what was a selfie with a drone. So even on complex scenarios, the trend is to be fully automated. I know because professionally, that's what we are doing, and it's a one-button operation now.
I understand where you're coming from, Louis, and I think there will be a decent percentage which will go down that route. But I think, to be controversial here, I think there's a damn huge portion of the market that if you can automate that, you are incredibly clever. Because if we take a very simple use case, and this is a simple one of a roof inspection. If you're wanting to do a proper roof inspection to go and generate a report off that, you need to be looking at specific things. So you need to be capturing gutters at a specific angle. You need to be looking to crevices at a specific angle, and to actually do that automatically is very difficult. When you start coming to modeling 3D modeling 3D assets,
it's not difficult. It's just a matter of perseverance, and if there is a market to make it automatic. If there is a market to make it automatic, I'm sure some clever guy will come up with some kind of AI or Bruce AI that will do it. Even more complex situations.
I think you might be a little bit ahead of the time. I don't think the technology is quite there yet. We're talking about sensors which are generally using cameras, optical sensors, which are prone to errors. I was doing a survey of a building like literally 10 days ago. There was a big tree next to the building. You tried 3D modeling a building when you've got a big tree next to it. To do it manually is incredibly difficult, because you're having to try and get overlap in terms of angular overlap, horizontal overlap, vertical overlap, but round a three-dimensional object, whilst being impacted by all of these other objects that are close to it. So your GSD is varying, your overlap is varying. It becomes a really complicated problem, and I just
for that specific case, I don't know, never studied it. But
this is the general case when it comes to things like BIM. When it comes to topo surveys, yeah, of course, press a button. Topo survey is easy, press a button. But when it comes to things like modeling 3D assets, that's difficult. It's really difficult, and I think the likes of Skydio are on the right path with what they're doing in terms of their visual recognition.
That's
and
what I was going to mention.
Give it 10 years, and yeah, I think it'll be able to be done autonomously. But
oh my God, you're so pessimistic, James. 10 years.
Yeah,
10 years. No.
Technology won't be the issue here. It'll be legislation. Technology will come along. The issue will be legislation. Whether you won't be allowed to send a drone autonomously. That's where
that's what happens today with us, because our drone performs its duties completely hands off, and we have to have a pilot watching the grass grow or the paint dry. And that's what the pilot does. He sits there for 20 minutes Oh, the grass is growing.
Is it like the old larders where they had the tin of paint in the back? Do you supply a tin of paint with the platform and getting to paint a little bit of wall or road? That would be perhaps the thing to do. My brother, there's a song like that. Restores historic buildings for people like the National Trust and things like that. And he still doesn't use drones. He says, as soon as it can beat a man in a bucket, because that's what he does. He swings a man in a bucket over the building who's a qualified inspector. And so that's the bottom line for him. Of course, I'm trying to twist his arm and saying that's the way you go, it's what you need to do.
Yeah.
His line is it's got to beat a man in a bucket.
But what he needs is to have that aerial survey that in 5 years' time they can go back and look at the 3D survey of the building before they even touched it. The man in the bucket can't do that, and that's where technology comes in. But
he can use Louis' paint, and while he's there, he can paint a little bit of the building that's needed. Yeah, no, I know. I hear what you're saying, and the sensors are coming to get those BIMs. BIMs are becoming a thing, aren't they? Really?
Well, it's also when the guy in the bucket falls out the bucket, and then suddenly he doesn't have anyone to do the inspection anymore, so he has to buy a drone to do it instead.
My brother's like Bruce; he's very callous. You'll just get another bloke for the bucket.
He could get hit by a drone up there. It's not safe.
That would be the irony in it. The man in the bucket gets hit by the drone.
That's probably what happened. That's probably what'll happen. Now, look, we've gone past the hour. Was there any more for any more? What have we missed?
There was something. What was it?
Oh, I see Skydio 2 is coming in the autumn. They got mentioned. So that is coming. But I hate it when they do that teaser sort of website page. If you want to know more, fill in your email address. No, just tell us now. Tell us now.
There was something else. I can't remember what it was now.
Well, I didn't make a note of it. You at UPS is beginning to deliver. Oh, we spoke about some CUAVs.
Yeah, and I will have in my hands tomorrow the new orange and yellow cubes to have a look at. So I'm looking forward to playing with them this week.
Does this mean we can build our 3.99 kilo cube powered photogrammetry drone?
I forgot about that.
I will speak to Ben this week. I've been talking to him. I've been a little bit tied up this week, but I've been talking to him on and off. And so he sent me over some cubes to have a look at, to have a play with the new ones. So I'm going to be having a look at the new of them this week as well.
I'm super serious. I'm up for doing this. If we can pull the pieces together, I've been wanting to do this for years. So and still, there's nothing there that fits the bill. So we would.
What's the requirements, James?
What's that, Louis?
What's the requirements?
A sub 4 kilo, good high resolution photogrammetry drone with PPK and a multi-rotor with redundant.
And what's your budget for that?
Less than 15K.
Oh. Shit. I'm sorry.
Did you the tone? The tone just went down.
That's not the salesman.
With just the PPK, I blew you your budget.
Oh, but okay. So if budget wasn't a problem, like how much would that cost me?
It would be very expensive. What's the flight time?
What's the flight time? Doesn't really matter, as high as possible.
Come on, it's all a matter of putting pieces together. The pieces are there. When you mentioned the PPK, you ruined because the budget of a PPK, they're still too expensive, in my opinion. But I always think that stuff is very too expensive.
It'd have to be dual frequency as well, not just L1 and L2.
No, L1, L5 or L2. I don't remember exactly. Come on, even I have a cell phone that has L1 and L5. So the things are coming. The pieces are coming to put in place, but still at the price that is not. You really have to get some business to justify the investment on the platform.
What I'm
Because
saying,
all the other pieces, the drone sub 4 kilos, depend.
Something interesting you mentioned there, Louis. Sorry, I was just want to say is, do you think that RTK, PPK is being artificially held up in price? Because as you say, if we look at other bits of the industry, the prices is falling dramatically, yet that side of it is still very, very high.
I don't know. I really don't want to get into uBlocks and the other manufacturers of GPS chipsets. But yeah, I think the costs of and the thing is, I can go and buy a PPK system for $1,000 or pounds or euros, whatever. But is it reliable? It's a lot of things. So on certain components, I don't think we should compromise and should go with components that give you reliable results.
well, the difficulties as well with these PPK systems is there's a lot of systems out there which say, oh, it's RTK or PPK enabled, but what it's telling you is the position of the antenna, which is pretty useless when for photogrammetry you want to know the position of the camera. So you then have to go and buy another board, plug it into that board, work out all your offset timings, your arm, your distance arms between the antenna and the gimbal, and then depending on what angle the gimbal's at, that will alter the position relative to the antenna.
I'm completely aware of all those issues. You might want to have a look at the Belgium company, which I won't mention.
What's it called?
Drones, but watch out for the prices. Probably you know them.
Maybe. So yeah, it's an integration problem. Like all the technology is there at the moment, but the only system that's close, I would say, is the Falcon 8. The Falcon 8 is still a popular machine for that kind of scenario. I think the Phantom 4 is good for BIM. The Phantom 4 Pro is good for like roof surveys and stuff like that. It's not good for topos. For topos, you then need to use a Matrice 210 or an Inspire with the whatever that duty sensor is that it's got. So you end up having to use a mixture of different machines. Whereas, if you had a machine which could fit all of the different scenarios, then yeah, I still think that there's a gap there which needs to be filled, and it's currently not being filled.
Yeah, I believe the M210s, especially the new ones, came to raise some new challenges to people that are operating them industrially. The Falcon, if you're happy with 6 to 8 minutes flights, then you're good to go. So we're missing a lot of good industrial drones. We have a good base platform with the S900 and the S1000. They were good base platforms that you could put an autopilot controller on it and fly reliably and do what you want to do for 20 minutes or 25 minutes, depending on the camera payload. But yeah, I would advise you to look at the solutions of that Belgian company that starts with an S, and you know the rest of the name.
I don't actually know which one you're talking about. Am I the only one who's not getting this? But
Septrino.
Yes.
Septrino. Centrino. Could be, yeah. I probably got that wrong. Yeah, they are flipping expensive.
Yeah.
Gary.
Sorry?
I didn't want to say the name, but you're a clickbait center.
Yeah, that's it. That's me. That's me all over. That's exactly it. Yeah, cool, man. All right, look, it's 1:15. Did anyone else have anything else before we head off? I'm looking forward to your video, Bruce, of whatever you've discovered. I'm sure we won't be too shocked, but it's well done on finding that. Ian, thank you very much from your luxurious hotel in Newport, as ever. And James, thank you for tempting out. And Louis from his hotel in Switzerland. Oh, that sounds so exotic, doesn't it? Thank you very much, gentlemen. Dear viewer, thank you very much for coming along. Don't forget, 2100 GMT again next week. Have a very safe week. Look after yourselves, and we will see you then. Cheerio all. Take care.